Hello and welcome back to the First Brick Property Podcast, where we equip buyers with the tools and insights to make smarter investment decisions. I'm your host KM, and today's very special guest has one of the most unique journeys in the real estate world. Emma Brown Garrett started her career in Bollywood, appeared in films and many films, and these days she's commanding a very different kind of stage as a highly respected property auctioneer with over 20 years in the industry. Emma's approach to auctions is layered, strategic, and full of nuance. She doesn't just call numbers, she reads body language, manages buyers' emotions, and sometimes even steps in to save a deal from collapsing. If you've ever felt confused or frustrated after walking away from an auction, this episode will give you the clarity and insider knowledge you've been missing. Emma, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you so much. That's such an amazing intro.
Thank you for driving all the way out to Southwest Sydney.
Thank you. It's not hard for me. I'm an auctioneer. I spend most of my time in the car.
Yes. Emma, our podcast is obviously made for buyers specifically. We have lots of people who sell that listen, of course, but it's all about educating buyers on the process and how they can get into the market. How
I love
they can
that.
buy their first property, typically their first investment. And in Sydney, specifically, auctions are massive. Everything goes to auction.
We have a very large auction culture here.
We do.
And the buyers are actually quite auction educated too. They do know.
For sure. And I think they know because, you've been on like 4 million podcasts before, so you're educating the country on how podcasts work, on how auctions work. But yeah, I think there's always new things we can learn.
Absolutely.
I'm always learning every time I go to an auction. This worked, that didn't work. And
As am I.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on. I'd like to just start actually with your background because it's so unique. It's so different, right?
It's very colourful.
Yeah. I mean, I had a strange background into getting into real estate. I mean, I came from an optometry background.
Oh, wow.
It's not nearly as colourful as your background. So for anyone that missed that little bit in the intro, or maybe thought I said something incorrect, your background, you're an actor.
That's correct.
How did you go from? Well, tell me about Bollywood acting.
So I actually started acting very young, and it was kind of all I ever wanted to do. And I went to NIDA as a teenager and obviously just spent many, many years, TV commercials and short films and theatre and things like that. But I also started real estate quite young as well. So I continued to act at the same time as also start my real estate career, which is I think now like 23 years.
Yeah.
Oh my God, when I say that out loud, it just scares me. But I always kind of had real estate as my little backup plan in case my acting career didn't work. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of chipped away at both for a while. And then my husband actually got an incredible opportunity to live and work in India, in Mumbai. And we jumped on the opportunity and I fell into Bollywood. I know that sounds silly, but I thought, well, why didn't I just get back into acting while I was in India? And so I landed an agent and, to be honest with you, I actually hit the ground running there. I was unique, an Aussie girl.
Yeah.
With very long dark hair and very, very white skin. Yeah. And they just loved my look and I suppose just a different nature of personality. And I ended up becoming quite successful and making a few very, very, very big Bollywood movies.
Yeah. I was going to try and pronounce them in the intro, but as I got to it, I was like, I'm going to stuff this up.
So there's one film that we did in 2011, a film called Yamla Pagla Divana.
Yeah.
And that was the highest grossing film of India in 2011.
Oh, wow.
So if you actually think about the numbers, I think at the time that we were living there was like 1.6 billion.
Yeah, billion with a B.
That's exactly right. So, there's a lot of people in India and a lot of people saw the film. And it was with a very, very, very famous actor and his sons, so the Deol family.
Yeah.
Bobby Deol, Sunny Deol, and I think his name. Oh my God, I've totally forgotten the father's name.
He's probably not listening, so it's okay.
So they're a very, very large family and a very big family in Bollywood. So incredible. I just got to work with the most incredible actors and to put it into perspective for the listeners, it's like making a film with Sean Connery, some of the actors that I worked with, or Tom Cruise, they're very, very, very famous.
So if you walk down the streets of Mumbai, people will know you and jump on you.
When I was there,
yeah,
I was very famous.
That's
Yes. So it was
amazing.
very difficult to come back to Sydney and then have to stand in a line to wait for a seat in a restaurant.
yeah. You should. Do people know who you are?
Yeah,
What's going on?
exactly. But it was a fabulous
Yeah.
chapter of my life. But I always, the whole time I was there, I kept my real estate license, would you
Yeah.
believe? I studied and did my real estate license every year, renewed my license and did my CPD points. And so in a way, I always knew that maybe that chapter was going to end and that there was something greater for me down the track. And I think all of those acting skills and everything that you learn along the way and along your journey, body language, tone of voice, projection of voice, public speaking, all of that has ultimately led into my career as an auctioneer. So
Yeah.
I'm very thankful to have had that that training and that experience. It's definitely made me the person I am.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Bollywood, out of all, places to be acting, is probably a great transition to
It was great.
auctioneering, right?
It was
'Cause
really great.
It's
And
very
also-
loud. It's very bright.
It's very bright and very loud. I also studied Hindi
Okay.
for the whole time that I was there. And I mean, it's not so great now, but there were days where I spoke no English. And I think,
That's amazing.
for 5 years living there, I would speak English with my husband when he came home at night, but most of the time on set and my day-to-day duties and chores, I spent speaking Hindi. So it was just an amazing,
cool.
it was an amazing
Yeah.
chapter. Yeah.
That's
Certainly
very
comes in handy now when
Yes.
I have a lovely vendor who's Indian or has a heritage of an Indian background. It definitely
And then
comes
they
in
notice
handy.
you. They're trying to bid, but they're like, I've seen you somewhere. I've seen you on a TV set. Doesn't make sense to me.
It definitely comes in handy.
They get flustered. They
Yeah,
add
they
an
love it. They
extra
just put
zero
some
on
more
there.
10,000.
Yeah.
They put another $10,000 on top.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's cool. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. It's very unique. Definitely, I think the most unique background in real estate I'll ever
it's a little
hear.
bit of fun, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's a little bit of fun.
You've been in the game for over 20 years, like you mentioned. So how has that shaped your understanding of buyers and how they behave under auction conditions? The time spent in the industry. I'm sure you've learned a lot over the time. I'm sure right at the start you probably had a perception event.
Absolutely.
And today there's a different perception and you can understand people differently. How has being in the game for a period of time? Because a lot of people, in buyer's agency right now, there seems to be a huge influx of people becoming buyer's agents.
Absolutely. It's a
And-
very smart thing to do if you're looking to buy.
Yeah, for sure. But so we put up a job ad, I was telling you before,
Yes.
and we've had over 50 applicants.
That's
Right,
impressive.
it's ridiculous, and so many people want to become buyer's agents, but it's like going through like a phase, I think, where people think it's easy, they jump in.
So
Whatever.
when I started
Yeah.
in real estate, it didn't exist. I mean, obviously there was the odd person who was a buyer's advocate,
Mm-hmm.
that would actually help someone along. But interestingly, this is a really great question because over the time that I've had in real estate and all of that time I spent in sales, I mean, I did leasing and sales and lots of stuff before I became an auctioneer. The way that I am with buyers now and what I've learnt about the buying process from being an auctioneer is next level. Even just, stepping out of that sales role and only working for the vendor. Yes, I still work for the vendor on the auction floor, but I also need to be able to relate to buyers when it comes to negotiation and when it comes to having discussions with them prior to the auction. And, buyers might call me and ask me what to do at auction. So I think having that relationship with them where I didn't really, before it was just like I was working for the vendor as a sales agent. And I think the second part of your question as well around, being a buyer's agent and that influx and is it kind of on trend at the moment? I think that we're very busy. I think that I always have this thing that I talk about where you get, it's called, this is, my mind just goes blank sometimes, honestly, when you're.
All of us. It's the bright lights.
It's the bright lights. It's the bright lights. When you have too much information and it's kind of analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Thank you. There you go. I had too many things to think about. Analysis paralysis, where you have so much information out there, and how do we filter all through that? So having somebody that's on your side and also to guide you through that process. So, have you got your finances sorted, your pest and building inspections, your strata? I think it can become very overwhelming for a buyer. And so to have somebody holding your hand and almost kind of like in your corner,
Yeah.
making you confident and feeling good about what you're doing is
Yeah.
a bonus. So
Of course. It's like anything. I mean, if you ask me right now, sell this property at auction as an auctioneer, I will crumble. I've never done it before. I'll be like, all these people are looking at me. I have
Exactly.
to remember these numbers. What am I supposed to say? Yeah, of course. And so if you have someone that's done it over and over again in
absolutely.
any
And you
walk of
shouldn't
life,
have to navigate it by yourself.
of
There's a
course.
lot, there is a lot to navigate,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to I work with a lot of buyer's agents, and a lot of my close friends are actually buyer's agents. The one thing that I've noticed where a buyer's agent really comes into play for you is in the very end of negotiation if you're buying something private treaty.
Mm-hmm.
I think having somebody there to guide you through what's the next steps, putting a number on a contract, signing a 66W certificate, which is a cooling off certificate for the buyers who don't know. Having somebody there to guide you through that is really important. So that's where I feel like at the very pointy end of a sale and on the auction floor, having your buyer's agent bid for you.
Yeah.
Imagine having somebody there to take all that stress away. So
for sure. I mean, sellers have been using help for years, right? With sellers
absolutely.
agents, it becomes the
Exactly.
norm. It'd be very hard to sell if you're not selling every day, if it's not what you do.
Anybody can sell their own home, but
Yeah.
I would never, ever, ever recommend it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's too much work. It's
Of
too
course,
much.
I would never sell my own home either. What a headache,
Either.
to be honest. Okay, I'd like to transition into the actual auction process from your perspective.
Yes.
So a lot of people who are not in the industry or who've never been to auctions or just seen one on TV, for example, when they watch the block or whatever.
Yeah.
They think
Which is not a true representation of an
at
auction.
at all, especially when you got old mate Adrian just throwing extra zeros for fun.
If that happens at one of my auctions, there's no 3333333. Thank you.
.33,
Oh,
right?
kill me.
That fell over the point.
Kill me. I'd ask him to be removed, actually.
Yeah. So that's a good point, right? So I'll get to that question actually a little bit later, but I was going to ask. So a lot of people who obviously just watch these things or are not sure, they think an auctioneer, they just stand there, they just yell numbers.
Yes.
Obviously, that's not the truth.
No.
So can you explain a little bit about exactly what your role is?
Yes.
In total, and what potentially people don't understand about your role?
So I'm probably a little bit different than most auctioneers. So I actually like to be involved in the process from the sign of agency.
Mm-hmm.
So as a sales agent, once you sign your agency agreement, if you're booking me as your auctioneer, I'm available for you to call the vendor and say, welcome aboard, congratulations on your choice of agent. He's a fabulous guy to work with, or she's an amazing agent. And I can help you through those next 4 weeks of set to sell meetings, reserve meetings, bad news that needs to be delivered about the market. I like to work with some of my agents throughout the entire campaign. So I think people want a little bit more now. I think people pay for service and they want they want to get their money's worth, right? And they want to have more information is powerful.
Yeah.
So working through a campaign with my agent up until auction day, and the nicest thing about that is that when it comes to auction day, I've had 2 or 3 touch points with the vendor.
Yeah.
They know who I am. They're not as anxious.
Yeah.
They feel very comfortable with me, selling their largest asset that they'll ever sell.
Yeah.
And it's just a breakdown of anxieties and everything just kind of washes away.
Yeah.
So I think gone are the days of somebody just showing up 2 minutes before the auction, calling the auction and then leaving. I sometimes help my agents exchange their contracts if they need it as well. And I'm also a great compliant tool. So if you have any questions throughout the campaign around registrations or anything to do with compliance. Maybe somebody's buying a property in a trust or a super fund or something like that. So I think where I'm different is that I do like to get involved. Not all agents like to use that. Sometimes they just like to have the auctioneer show up. But definitely for me, it's not just about showing up and calling numbers. I feel that I can add a lot of value into these businesses and provide support to agents around the auction process. So
I mean, that makes so much sense. If I was selling my property, I mean, like you mentioned, typically people are selling the most expensive thing they own ever.
And people do it every I think it's like every 7 to 10 years or something like that.
It's not a common thing that
we do it every day.
Correct.
And I'd do 15 auctions a week.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's it's second nature,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. But if I was selling, I've got a relationship with my sales agent now,
Yeah.
and real estate is all relationships. And this person's going to sell my property. I'm comfortable with them. But then if the auctioneer rocks up on the day and I've never spoken to them,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, man, I don't know if this person is any good. I don't know what they like. I don't know what their style is. Do they care about me? Are they just here? So the way you're approaching it, I think, is amazing and makes so much sense. And I think every auctioneer, we've just added a lot of work to all the auctioneers out there, something like that. To be honest.
I just like I like the relationships. I like to get to know my vendors, and I love the agents that I work with. So I just feel in those moments of negotiation, if you all know each other, how much easier is it
Of course.
to seal the deal and have a negotiation completed if everybody knows each other and they're just more relaxed? Like that's just my end approach to this, and my final destination is if we're all comfortable, we can come to an agreement.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I agree. So you're standing at the front, you're looking at all these people. What's actually running through your mind as you're
Well,
running an auction? Like,
usually
are you
I've-
observing the crowd?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Usually I would have met the buyers beforehand. So I do really enjoy, standing at the registrations, meeting the buyers, letting them feel comfortable. I introduce myself. I sometimes say to them, I'll look for an opening bid as a bit of a joke. And, we kind of have that uncomfortable wall fall down. When I'm standing just about to start the auction, I do have a look at where people are positioned, monitor their body language, just get a sense of, maybe I'll think who's going to start the bidding. But as soon as we start the bidding and bidding starts to flow, you get a pretty good idea of who's bold, who's confident, who's nervous, who's scared. And I think that comes down to, again, we'll probably talk about this later, but having a strategy on auction day. So,
for sure.
yeah.
You actually mentioned so many things there that I was like really interested in. I was just going to ask the last one before I forget it because I didn't note it down.
Go.
You just mentioned, you notice who's bold, who's
Yes.
nervous. Do you find there's a particular, and I'm just curious, there's a particular personality trait that wins auctions more often, or is it random? Like, do the bold people win it more often, or do they start really strong then kind of fade away and the nervous people kind of grow into it, or is it kind of random?
I think it's random,
Yeah.
but you can build a strategy for auction day regardless of your personality that will push you towards success.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
but I think if you are a bold and confident person, you're probably going to be more likely to come busting out of the gates, so to speak, and land that first bid versus somebody that's a bit reserved and shy. But it also really matters on who you take advice from with that as well.
Of course.
So,
yeah. I mean, we develop our strategies, how we approach auctions, where we've been doing kind of the same thing for years, and it works a lot of the time. I think at the end of the day, auction, so if someone's got more money than you and they really want it. Well,
and it's unpredictable in the moment, right? You never know.
Correct. But I read a stat once about opening bid. And I want to ask you about the opening bid because you mentioned it a couple of times. How important is it for someone to make the opening bid? From two perspectives. Your perspective as an auctioneer, like how important is it to just get it going?
Get it going.
From the buyer's perspective, we read some data before that said, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was like 60-something% of people that make the opening bid end up purchasing the property.
Yes, we always talk about this.
Yes.
It is a high percentage of people, if you start, you're more likely to finish.
Yeah.
What that does come down to is that it does show confidence and you are very bold in that moment to start the auction. I think if you ask me about strategies, starting first and starting at a very good level as well. It doesn't have to be your best bid, obviously. Just needs to be a bid to get us underway. But it really does just you cement your position, and people think, wow, and maybe they won't stop. Maybe they've come here today to purchase.
Yeah.
You've set your intention on the auction floor, and it can. It can put people off. And let's face it, it's a little bit of a psychological move that I've come to win today and I'm not leaving without it, even though their budget might not be there.
Yeah, everyone's got a budget.
Everyone's got a budget, exactly. But I do enjoy when I do call for an opening bid and we do start bidding straight away, the difference between an auction momentum and vibe compared to something that people just don't start bidding. It's very different.
Yeah. There's been a lot of auctions that I've attended, and it's just awkward.
I'm very comfortable in that space, by the way. I
Yeah.
often say on the auction floor,
Yeah.
if nobody's bidding, I can stand here. I'm very comfortable in the uncomfortable. But it's
but
awful.
from an auction, like for the vendors, and from your perspective, is very important to get that.
It's very important. I actually do
going.
brief my vendors beforehand, and I do say I often call for an opening bid and you will hear nothing.
Yeah.
I said, so please,
Don't stress.
please do not. It doesn't make any difference to the outcome. We just see a little bit of hesitation from buyers holding back. But if you have a great buyer's agent,
that's true. We usually make the opening bid, right?
you
going.
really do. And I think, again, coming back to, having that support and having somebody there guiding you, there's no reason why you would sit back and wait when you've got someone there to bid for you.
Yeah, for sure. And at the end of the day, you can wait all day, but if you want to buy it, you got to start bidding. So
I say this as well, KM. I say we need to have bids for an auction.
Yeah.
Like we cannot, you can't just stand in the crowd.
Sure.
But, ironically, everybody's waiting for somebody else to start. And so, you would have seen it a million times, 9 out of 10 times, as soon as somebody starts, the bidding just flows.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just that, it's just breaking the seal, so to speak,
There was an auctioneer that I went at. There was an auction. Let me rephrase because I've forgotten how to English.
I like that. I've forgotten how to English.
Yeah. There was a particular auctioneer, and I've been to a few of his auctions randomly. Like it wasn't specifically that he just turned out to be the auctioneer at all these auctions. And he said, whoever makes the opening bid, there's a bottle of wine for you. Yeah. Is that a common strategy in the auction space? Because it's not a bad idea, right?
It works. It does work. I work the whole city, and there's a lot of places where they don't use it, but there's a lot of places where they do.
Yeah.
I would go as far to say that not everybody drinks these days.
Yeah.
Being sober is quite cool now. And so I think if you were going to start something like that, maybe even a gift voucher or like a $50 Westfield gift voucher would just be bomb, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Even
like
if I lose $50,
exactly
right?
I think there's a lot of people that still use it, but it is very enticing. Ironically, when that does happen, it's not always an intentional bid.
Yeah.
So somebody might place it just to get it rolling.
To get the win. Yeah.
I can't say that everybody that's done that and won the champagne has actually won the property as well.
I think a lot of the time they don't, because
they walk away with the champagne.
They
not
walk
the
away with
house.
the champagne. Yeah, they're just coming to watch it.
Exactly.
They wrote their name down.
So I wouldn't use it as a strategy as an agent. I wouldn't use it as a strategy, but be mindful about the fact that not everybody drinks these days. And so I would do a voucher, or I would do, something else that was probably a bit more appropriate.
Yeah. I was actually listening to you on another podcast, doing my research, and then
I'm glad you stalked me.
Yes, and I heard you mention that you can tell when a buyer has more to give.
Yes.
So what are the specific signs that, because as a buyer's agent, I'm going to learn from you.
You'll learn.
Yeah. How do I make sure
giving my little tricks and tips away. This is a big thing about body language, right? So a lot of people ask, what's the difference between an auctioneer, right? So there's a lot of auctioneers out there, lots and lots of auctioneers that you can choose from. But what separates the good from the great? A really great auctioneer will be able to read, say you've got 7 bidders. I will be able to read, a great auctioneer will be able to read every single bidder on that floor, what their body language is. Are they looking stressed? Are they looking nervous? Do they have more money? Was that their last bid? And what it does come down to is really their body language and how they move. So you might watch their shoulders slump forward, the expression in their face change. They become fidgety. They might turn to their partner for the first time throughout the bidding and start talking, discussing their strategy there where they should have discussed it in the car beforehand. A classic one is like the paddle back in the bag or in the pocket. Sometimes it's a strategy. Sometimes people use that to make people think they're not bidding anymore. But you really can tell one thing around people that don't have any more money, but it's a very, very interesting talent to have, to see when people do still have more to give.
Yeah.
and more to bid. And one of those things is obviously their body language and power and stance, but also the increments of what they're bidding in. And so if they're still bidding in $10,000 and $5,000 or perhaps even $25,000, you know that they haven't hit the bottom of their budget. And so, there's no reason why you couldn't ask for more on the auction floor if you'd reached your maximum and everybody else had stopped bidding. It's reason why we step off the auction floor and possibly ask for an increased bid if we are underneath our owner's expectations.
Yeah.
As an auctioneer, you can feel in that moment if there's a little bit more to give. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong, but definitely always searching for that extra. I mean, even another $1,000 helps. You know, it's solicitor's fees, and every little bit helps on the auction floor. So
yeah, for sure. There's so much that you've mentioned. I'm taking notes because I'll bring this all up in the strategy section. I'm very excited to talk about it. I guess my last question before we get into the strategy is just off that, because I think it's amazing. I think auctioneers are amazing, genuinely, because when I go to an auction and I'm watching or I'm bidding and I'm just thinking, man, how are you dealing with so much? Like, you're reading everyone's body language.
And remember, we talked about this. It's live.
Yeah,
this is
live.
Another thing too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I often joke with my girlfriends about how Saturdays, like I did 9 auctions on Saturday, just gone.
Yeah.
And I often joke about how, imagine you started one and it wasn't going right, and you just said, "Okay, everybody, stop.
Yeah.
We're going to start again. You're going to give me those bids back again." Like, it just doesn't work like that. It's in the moment,
sure.
right?
100%.
Yeah.
It's actually extremely impressive. I don't know. I can't find the word.
Can we do this weekly?
Yeah,
can I come onto your podcast
yeah,
weekly?
of course.
I love you.
We can change it to the property and auctioneering podcast. I wanted to ask, so just on that, is there signs as well that you see when people sometimes become, you now know that it's emotional bidding as opposed to strategic bidding?
Yes.
And there were some things you mentioned that I look for as well as a fellow bidder, but I'll let you take the lead.
I sometimes, when I sell a property and the underbidder has stopped abruptly and they're not successful in winning the property, I sometimes step off the auction floor afterwards and I say to them, "I know you didn't win today, but I wanted to say congratulations for stopping at your budget and not buying with your emotions, because feeling remorseful about purchasing something is really, really bad."
Yeah.
Okay, it's all right to go over budget a little bit, but if you're fighting on the auction floor to win and you feel anxious and stressed and you purchase something and you've blown your budget, it's an awful feeling. And so I think knowing your limit and sticking to it, even though you might possibly lose at auction, it's not such a bad thing.
Yeah.
Going away with regrets is awful, right?
Yeah, for sure. And obviously at auction, like you mentioned, you sign a 66W, there's no cooling off period, which means you're buying this property. You're putting a 10%.
It's an unconditional exchange.
Which
you are
is
there.
in Sydney, that's big money.
Yeah, it's big money.
So you have to be sure. And so, I mean, when we're bidding, we're obviously looking at people to understand if they're out, if they're in, if there's more money, and who's gone emotional. And the problem is when you've, as a fellow bidder, when you're competing against emotional bidders, well, it's almost impossible to compete because
it's very hard.
They've lost their head.
They've lost their head.
I went to an auction with my brother-in-law a little while ago, a couple of years ago, and he said, "Can you come with me?" I said, "Do you want me to bid for you?" And he said, "No, I want to do it, but can you just come with me?" I said, "Yeah, I can come with you. I do this for
Yeah, you should let me do it."
Yeah, he goes, "I know. I just want to." I said, "Yeah, sure." And we discussed the strategy beforehand. I said, "Okay, Sam, this is what you want to do. This is how I would do it." And then, and I guess this is a transition to the strategy section. And so this is how you want to do it. This is what you want to do, and this is where you want to stop.
Great.
Because this is how much money you have.
Great advice.
And if you go past this, Ferdy, your broker, who's a friend of the podcast, is not going to be happy.
He's going to be calling you immediately.
Yeah, because you don't have the money. So if it gets to that point, just stop. It's not worth it. We'll find you another property.
Yes.
He said, "Yeah." I said, "Are you sure you don't want me to bid for you?" He said, "Yeah. Anyway, so it was Sam, my sister Mary, his kids, and myself at this auction. I said to him, "Man, an auction only needs 2 people to run." So our strategy, and I guess we're transitioning to the strategies, I like to start the auction, and I like to run hard and fast to my limit.
This is a good strategy.
And then if I get to my limit and someone bids above me, It is what it is.
That's exactly right.
But the idea is, and what you were saying is you don't want people to think you're going to stop.
Yes.
And so when we bid, I could put a bid as soon as someone else is bidding, I'm already bidding on top of them.
Yes.
Right. And I want the auctioneer to know I'm here, I'm playing.
I'm here to buy.
Yeah. And
yeah.
take care of me, don't take care of these people who are making your life difficult. I'm here, I'm giving you bids, I'm throwing money at you. And so he did the strategy. We started, we got to a point, and then the other bidder, it ended up becoming a 2-horse race very quickly.
Yes.
Which is great because he started so strong. I think it removed a lot of other people.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And so it was a 2-horse race. And the other person was also him, his wife, and his kids, the other person that was bidding. And we got very close to his limit. And then the other person dropped their increments dramatically. It was like we're going up in 20s or 10s or whatever it was, and it went down to like 1.
Mm.
So I looked
Classic
at Sam.
telltale.
I said, Sam, don't bid 1. If you bid 1, we're just going to keep going and going and going. Kill the auction. I said, kill the auction. You've got space. Just chuck a 10, chuck 7, whatever.
Just do
Kill
it.
the auction. No. Bid 1.
Oh, it's an auctioneer's
ones
nightmare.
Went for, I don't remember the figure because this is years ago, but it was like $30,000
Yes.
worth of ones. Eventually we got to his limit. And I knew the other guy was at his limit because he started at 1, and he looked at his wife and did the whole, and she's tugging his shirt like, we don't have this kind of money. And then so they're both gone emotional now. And Sam's looked at Mary, and Mary's looked at me. I said, it's not my money. I can't tell you what to do, but you should stop.
You need to stop.
You should stop. Mary, like, you're my sister. Sam, you're my brother-in-law. You guys should stop. You don't have the money. But the kids looked at him and they're like, oh, Dad, we really like the property. I was like, Sam, they're going to like any property.
Of course they are. And it's in the moment, right?
Yeah. They kept going back and forth. And then I don't know how the increments went from 1 to 5s, but I think they had both gone past their budgets. Both became emotional. Lucky for the vendor, and the auctioneer was cheering at the end of it.
Of course.
Crazy result. He didn't buy it because it was very clearly well past his budget. But that's just an example of how emotional auctions can
Absolutely
get and how it can throw off everything, but how it could have been finished.
It could have finished with his 10.
Yeah.
Because he'd set his intention.
Yeah.
And if he'd done a 10, the other people would have turned around and said, well, he's got so much more money than us. Let's just not bid again.
Correct.
Interestingly, in the $1,000 bids, people think that they don't know the impact of them.
Yeah.
They don't set intention. They just go back and forth, and they take a very, very long time. And the irony is that you eventually get there with what you were going to spend anyway.
Yeah.
It just doesn't it doesn't show strength on the auction floor.
No. And it lets the other person in that you're competing
It does,
against.
because all of a sudden you become equal. The both of you have reached your budget.
Yeah.
The both of you are now fighting it out. Whereas if you show your hand of a larger bid, you show that I have infinite amount of money to spend and you will not beat me.
Yeah.
So it's a good little
for
good little
sure.
strategy. But this is what I said to you before about how if you're going into an auction without a strategy, don't go to the auction. You need to have something prepared before you go there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think reading the room is really a big part of being at an auction, because if you notice someone's dropping their bids and whatnot, this is not the time to. Because when someone drops it to 1,000 and you go 1,000, they think, it's just another 1,000. I'm at 1.7 million. What's another 1,000?
It's just another 1,000. You're absolutely right.
But you chuck on 10,000, 7,000, whatever.
It's a scary number.
Now it's a big number.
It's a big number.
But you've gotten to the 10,000 very quickly. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
Exactly. It doesn't take long, does it?
As an auctioneer, surely you don't like ones. Like, how annoying are ones?
I don't like 500s.
Oh, yeah. Or
I always
cents.
have a joke that at my auctions, everybody gets one $500 bid and that's it.
Yeah.
So just you can use it, choose to use it where you like. It's like buying a vow. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
I often say on the auction floor, if we are bidding back and forth, if we do the ones, we do them quick. They don't set intention. Something larger is better. So you will hear me voice that on the auction floor, but obviously we work in the best interests of the vendor and the seller. But also I can refuse any bid that I don't deem in the best interest. And so if we are going back and forth in those ones, I mean, I can refuse and just say, look, we're going to stick to the 5s or the 10s.
Yeah.
You know, at the pointy end of the auction there, I probably wouldn't. But if those $1,000 bids come too early in my auctions, and any auctioneer, you will hear them say that it's just too early for those increments. We are going to stay in those higher increments. We just want to push people towards home ownership. We don't want to give them the false hope at the beginning of the auction that you can buy it for this price, you know?
Yeah.
So
just on that, I think a lot of people don't know that you can refuse a bid.
yes, you can.
Do you often? Because I've seen a lot of auctioneers refuse opening bids.
Yes.
Yeah, especially
Yes.
opening bids.
Absolutely.
Is that common practice? Or?
It is. If we receive an opening bid that's below the guide, and
Yeah.
they've been very clear about where we're guiding in the auction guide, we're going to push back. The only reason being is that it takes a very long time to get to where you need to get to. If we're starting really low and we're going in small increments, nobody wants to be there for 45 minutes.
No.
It's just, it becomes very emotional. You become very lethargic. It's a very, very high energy, stressful situation.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to be in that situation for 45 minutes.
It's actually exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And you'll see a lot of people when they step off the auction floor, I mean, they're emotional.
Yeah.
Their cortisol is very high.
Yeah.
Their adrenaline is absolutely peaking. I often say to people, let the adrenaline settle.
Yeah.
Take a moment, have a drink, and then come and do your contracts,
Yeah.
you know? And so pushing back on that opening bid, if it's below the guide and it's just ridiculous, and I always say like it's too optimistic, you know?
Yeah.
We're not selling for that price in the area. The buyer knows that. Everybody on the floor knows that. So I will push back very politely.
Yeah.
There's no place to be rude. But, you know, we appreciate your opening start, but far too optimistic. And you know, we all know what the property's worth here today. And I'd like to meet you halfway, or, you know, can you take me up to 1.8, or can we meet at the guide?
Yeah.
But there's a polite way to refuse.
Yeah, of course.
I'm very polite on the auction floor. No need to get messy.
No, because that person might end up having all the money.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, I've discussed my strategy, and
Yes.
and I was very nervous saying it in front of you because you're the auction queen. So, what would you say the best strategy is? Or if someone's coming in as a buyer and they go into auction for the first time or whatever, and the 10th time, they've missed out on 9 properties auctions. What's a good strategy? It doesn't have to be the best, but what's a good strategy?
Most auctioneers would probably say the same thing as most buyer's agents would. Have your strategy beforehand. Have a conversation with your buyer's agent. Have a conversation with your agent, and decide what you would like to do. But in my opinion, if you want to hold the auction floor and be seen as somebody that's not going to back down, starting immediately with an opening bid and at the guide, something a little stronger, something that says, I've come today to purchase. I've come today to win. And starting straight away, as soon as the auctioneer calls for an opening bid, you will find that it flusters a lot of people on the auction floor. It sets the tone for the auction that we're going to run with this. It's going to be fast. It's going to be quick. It's going to be high energy. I definitely think if you start that, you've got a good opportunity there to hold the auction and to hold the momentum of the auction.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's obviously a lot of people like the strategy of do nothing till right at the end.
Do you know? I don't know if you saw that meme that was going around. I mentioned it in my last podcast where it said, "Take advice from your agent when bidding at auction, not from your uncle that bid 10 years ago."
Yes,
Oh my God,
yes.
that was like my favorite meme of 2025.
Yeah,
The advice that people get from people that have not participated in an auction recently, or a solicitor who might not like auctions, or a friend who was outbid 20 times at an auction, do not take that advice from people.
Yeah.
Standing up on the auction floor and not doing anything is a waste of everybody's time.
You can't win.
Well, you can't win. And also, if you're sitting back waiting for the auctioneer to call on the market, this is another thing that you'll know a lot of as a buyer's agent, that language doesn't really exist anymore. Yeah. So not a lot of auctioneers will say it's on the market. The agent might announce it when we're above reserve, but we will usually just say we're selling, ladies and gentlemen, fair warning. Yeah. We're going to be selling it to the highest bidder. And if you miss that, or if you're not educated enough around that language to selling, as you know, the contract can fall to the palm very, very quickly. And so if you're sitting back and waiting, you might miss it. I've been at auctions where people have missed.
Yeah.
I didn't realize we were selling. I didn't know it was on the market.
Yeah.
We'd have no obligation to call it on the market at all.
Yeah.
So we just need to announce that we're selling the property.
Yeah. That was literally my next question. I was going to
Yeah.
ask, do people waiting for on the market obviously can backfire.
It can backfire,
badly.
and it has.
Yeah, and it does all the time. Do auctioneers mention whatever wording do you say when it has passed reserve?
Yes. So
In
you
whatever
must
way?
announce. You must announce that it is selling.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the agents might come out and say, "Emma, great news, we're on the market."
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to go back, another, 10, 15, 20 years ago, when it was a big thing of like, we're on the market, ladies and gentlemen, we're on the market.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And as you know,
It's very subtle.
it's very subtle, and there are cues that you need to look for.
Yeah.
Again, have buyer's agent. Don't look for those cues for yourself.
Yeah.
Hire a buyer's agent. Work with a buyer's agent because they know.
Yeah, I should bring you on every week. It's the best advertisement ever.
But I mean it. Like, why in that moment should you fit with everything that's going on? You're trying to buy a home. You might have family members there. Don't bring your kids to an auction.
Don't do it.
Leave them at home. Get them babysat.
Don't bring your wife. Don't bring your kids. Don't just go by yourself. If you're the wife, don't bring your husband.
Agent.
Yeah,
exactly.
Correct.
In that moment when you're trying to focus on everything, and then you're supposed to look for the cues of when the property might be sold, or it's a very difficult. It's a very high energy, difficult moment, right? So, so if you're sitting back and waiting for that moment, my advice to you is don't.
Do you find buyer's agents bring their clients with them to the auctions?
Some that I work with do.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly fine and it's a great thing to do. It's a great thing to do if you have a little bit more money to spend, but you might not want to spend it. And so in that moment, you'd like to win. And, you've got your client there and you quickly say, well, look, do you want to put another 20 on top?
Yeah.
Are you happy to go above your limit?
Yeah.
It happens. There's no ratio to when it happens or not. Yeah. Some people bring them, some people don't.
Yeah. We've done both. Typically, it's just up to the buyer if they want to come or not. No
Sometimes they're so nervous they don't want to be there.
Yeah, we've had a few that sit in the car.
Yes.
Like the street away. Okay.
On FaceTime around the corner.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, you do need them to sign the contracts, right?
Yes. So. And we've had some standing right next to us, and some that stay at home, and we get authority to sign on their behalf in the meantime until they sort it out. I was just curious. What do you think the biggest mistake buyers make at auctions? Besides obviously not bidding.
My biggest thing is not having a strategy.
Yeah.
I really mean that. I think if you're showing up with no idea what to do and you think you can just wing it, you cannot wing an auction. You have to have discussions about what are we bidding, how are we bidding, the discussion around what increments we'll bid in. Should we bid in 10,000? Should we bid in 25s? Should we bid in 50s?
Yeah.
That discussion alone is so valuable. Do we bid straight away after another person's put a bid in? That's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
You want to show your place on the auction floor.
Same.
I always say this: a quick retort's a good retort.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
The second before the numbers have even left the other bidder's mouth.
Literally what I told my clients.
It is such a smart strategy. Yeah. Buyers, you've got to have discussions with your agent. You've got to have discussions with your buyer's agent. You've got to be showing up on auction day with a plan and 3 or 4 scenarios. Okay, well, what if there's 2 bidders? What if there's, 4 bidders? And also, what if we're the only bidder too?
Yeah.
So again, all those discussions that you have beforehand will only increase your chances on auction day.
Yeah. How do you appreciate or not appreciate the random increments? Everyone's going up in 20s, and then someone's giving you $27,325.
So you can do this at my auctions because we actually train for those numbers. So my team and a lot of other auctioneers I work with, we have a small fraternity where we do auction competitions.
Yeah.
So anybody out there that's wondering what an auction competition is, we all meet all the auctioneers around Australia once a year, compete for a championship called the Australasians, and you call a mock auction, and the increments and the numbers are diabolical.
Yeah.
I mean, it is mathletics at its absolute best.
Yeah.
17 and a half and 36 and
Yeah.
1/8 of a million and, you know, don't even get me started. So if you're coming to an auction of mine and you want to throw me a 27,750,
Yeah.
you know, like it just go for it. It's not a great strategy. It doesn't really get you anywhere. All it does is make everybody else flustered on the auction floor as well. Remember that bidders are also tracking the numbers, right? And so it won't help you win the auction. If you're confusing the auctioneer, that's not going to help you win the auction.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant. But if you feel like you would like to do that.
Just want to throw one out there. Yeah.
But it doesn't. Remember, we also have a scribe with us too, and
Correct.
the agents will assist us. So,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It's not a good strategy.
No. I think, like, as you've mentioned a few times, and the best strategy is just going in strong,
Yes.
showing your intentions. Do you find that placement makes a difference, like where people stand?
Yeah, this is a really good
Yeah,
question.
because I have a place that I like to
I
stand.
like this.
Yes.
I like this. Yes, I do actually.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be front and center, but visible.
Yeah.
Hiding behind trees. Actually, I saw one the other day where the buyer, he was a real estate agent actually. He was buying this property and he was behind the tree and I couldn't find him. Every time he placed a bid, I couldn't find him. And I was like leaning around. I was trying to get him from behind the tree and I had to confirm his bid several times because I couldn't see him and I couldn't see his paddle. And of course, as you know, you've got to put your paddle up when you take a bid, when you place a bid. I need to verbally hear it and I also need to see it.
Yeah.
That obviously solidifies the number that's being called out. But yes, I think visible doesn't have to be front of the class.
Yeah.
And, you know, I always have a thing where I say to buyers that also just look nice.
Yeah.
Wear something nice, dress, don't come in your pajamas.
Don't be angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look nice, dress nice. I know this is really silly, but I think the way you show up on auction day can also influence. And so I think if you're dressed really lovely, doesn't have to be a dinner suit, but if you look really respectable and you look like you're about to own the property, I've always thought that. But then I'm not the girl to ask because I dress up when I go to Woolworths.
Yeah,
so.
fair enough. Fair enough.
I've always got my lips on or a jacket. But, you know, I think if in that moment, if you can, you know, dress well, feel good about yourself and feel confident, you know, stepping out and going to the auction, definitely.
Yeah. I think the placement is equally as important.
I agree.
I like to stand next to the auctioneer. not right in the front.
I can't wait until you and I are bidding with each other.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
It'll be fun. Not right next to the auctioneer, but like at the front of the group. And so
now that you say that, actually, I've noticed that a few buyers agents often stand on the side of the auctioneer. So, I mean, picture a semicircle. That's where we're at, right? So we're in a semicircle. I'm in the center, and I've got my buyers around me. Mm-hmm. I have noticed that buyers agents sometimes like that corner position.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's I think the idea is that firstly we want everyone to see us because we also want to look pretty and whatnot.
Yes, of course. Do you have branding on? Do you wear your?
I'm everywhere.
Do you wear your first brick? I like
only
this.
have branded clothes.
I like this. This is good.
I actually was somewhere the other day and someone said to me, "Do you own?" I said, "No, I just own branded clothes." Like, you don't own anything else? I was like, "Nah." Everything literally says first brick on it. So,
I like this.
But no, I think it's to make people, it's to let people see you.
Yes.
And when you're bidding confidently and quickly and strongly, and because our strategy is obviously as the other person is bidding, like you said, before they've even finished, we've already bid above you. And so it's to give the idea, these people have deep pockets or unlimited pockets, and they're just going to buy whatever. And
why not?
Yeah.
Every little bit of strategy helps.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you find phone bidders?
So usually when we do phone bidders, the agent is a lot of the times the agent will be bidding on behalf, but you know also there are some people that come and register on behalf, a family member.
Yeah.
It's tough with phone bidders because if you do need to pause and you do need to kind of have a discussion of whether they're going to bid a little bit more. I have noticed that often people in the crowd become very frustrated because they don't know. There is one thing that I want to let your viewers know. As an auctioneer, we have to cite every bit of piece of paper and document that comes through around people that are registered to bid. I will cite every registration. I will cite every driver's license, including the people on the phone.
Yeah.
So for those people out there, nobody's making anything up.
Yeah.
There's no smoke and mirrors anymore. We don't engage in dummy bidding. If I at all feel that there's an inkling of that on my auction floor, you will be removed from my auction. I've worked really hard to keep my license and to function in this sector that I wouldn't jeopardize that. So a lot of buyers sometimes might think that, well, are they real? I mean, and you would have had this conversation before. They're real. The auctioneer must cite all of their identification before we start bidding. And so I can guarantee you 100% of the time, if the agent is standing on the left side of me and they're holding a paddle and they're bidding on behalf of somebody, there is somebody on the other end of that line.
Yeah, it's people are really scared of auctions, you know.
I know they are.
And people like we get the question all the time: how do we know there's not a dummy bidder, or the agent doesn't have a mate there bidding? I said, well, because if that mate ends up on the top, what are they going to do, right?
Well, exactly. It just doesn't. I think it. Look, if it's happening out there, and I think I might have talked about this on my last podcast actually. If it's happening out there, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
And you know, look, sometimes somebody will show up in a jacket and sunglasses and a scarf and a hat and all that kind of stuff and try to look a little bit incognito. Maybe I'm suspicious, but at the end of the day, you have to register. You have to show your driver's license. And let me tell you, if that's your strategy and you're sending somebody to bid at auction and it goes awfully wrong and they end up buying the property, I will sign that contract on their behalf and I'll see you in court.
Yeah.
So there's repercussions, correct?
Of course.
It doesn't, it's not just, it's not just fun and games here. Play silly games, win silly prizes.
That's true. That's
you
true.
know?
I think the days of dummy bidders are definitely out.
It just
not
doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it does. Maybe I don't know about it. Maybe I'm being naive. But in my world, I would like to think that the agents I work with are extremely professional and they will not engage in that.
I mean, you've obviously been to a lot more auctions than I have, but I haven't seen anyone that I would suspect was a dummy bidder or anything like that.
I've never encountered a dummy bidder in my career yet.
Before I move on to the next section, I just had I don't know, you said something and it triggered a funny thought in my mind. Have you ever seen people, just in terms of strategy and like trying to intimidate the other buyers, people like rent fancy cars, park right at the front? Because I've seen it.
Oh my God, this is taking strategy to the next level.
Genuinely, I've seen people rent really, really expensive sports
and
cars and show up a little bit, like not late. They've obviously registered, but they'll like drive around, like they'll go to
and
the
they
corner,
just pull
and
in.
then they'll come up just before the auction starts, like 2 minutes.
Oh my God, I want to meet these people. Who are these people?
They're just, I don't know, just random people
well,
in
actually,
Southwest Sydney.
It does come back to my point of showing up looking good.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what
triggered Does it work?
I look, the times that I went, they were competing against me, so it didn't work.
It didn't work, of course, because they didn't have a buyer's agent.
Because they didn't have a buyer's agent, but they tried everything else. I can see why it could work, but I think it has to come as a package. You can't do that and not bid till the end.
Well, that's exactly right. So so for people out there that are renting sports cars to bid at auction, I mean, first of all, if that's your strategy you come up with, I mean, I have to commend you. It's a big commitment. It's all in. Yeah. But then go all the way in.
Correct.
So, start your bidding straight away. Bid in your large increments, and go and first of all hire a buyer's agent to do it for you and stand next to the buyer's agent, stand next to the car with the buyer's agent, get the buyer's agent to bid for you.
And then give the card to the buyer's
agent. That's exactly right. Yeah. Go all in. Don't just go halfway. If that's part of your strategy, go the full way.
Yeah, for sure. I'll ask you a few quick ones because I've taken way too much of your time.
No, not at all. I could sit here and talk all day, right?
So can I. I don't know. I put my phone somewhere and so it's ringing, but I don't care. I'm having a good time. How have you seen the changing market conditions affect the way auctions are run? Because obviously rates go up, rates go down, things change, the economy, depression, whatever, recessions and all the rest terms that people throw around without really understanding it. How does it affect, how have you seen it affect auctions and does it affect the way you run the auction?
These last 6 to 12 months where we've had a lot of uncertainty in the market, rate changes and obviously what happens in America affects us as well, and this anxiety around where we're heading. The one thing that I've noticed which disturbs me and bothers me is that buyers are showing up to auction. Sometimes they're not even registering.
Yeah.
There's interest in the property and they show up to auction day just to wait to see what happens.
Yeah.
Or they register and they sit back and they do nothing. And I think it bothers me because we're providing this incredible transparent environment for you to buy, and yet you're still holding back and you're still sitting back and waiting to see what happens after. And often it's just that's not a great strategy either, right? I'll just wait until the property passes in and then I'll negotiate afterwards. 9 out of 10 times you don't end up winning the property.
There's no control.
There's no control. With the auction process, you can hear competition and see competition and everyone's there and it's all very transparent. And then what's the point of going behind closed doors and having an auction after an auction?
Yeah.
To me, I don't understand that. But that's the thing that I've noticed the most is that there's also a real wall that comes between the buyers and the agents, and this, not disclosing information about their current situation or not having open conversations with them about where they want to be. Yes, the agent works for the vendor, but they're also there to help you buy.
Yeah.
So, you can talk with them and ask them for advice, but definitely the thing that bothers me is that people show up and they just don't engage at all.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would come to an auction if you were interested and not register and not put and not express your interest.
Yeah.
That's I've really seen a lot of that. And actually the Saturday just gone, I had a few auctions where that happened, and I just wanted to go over and say to them, just register.
Yeah.
Okay, we might only have one bidder, but we can negotiate here on the auction floor. We can help you buy this property.
Yeah.
Help me help you.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of my
100%.
favorite sayings in the world.
Yeah.
Help me help you.
It's true though. It's true. What's your take on underquoting?
Mm-hmm.
Is it still a problem from your perspective?
Sorry.
On the ground, do you? I brought this. I have this question because I went to an auction 3 months ago for a client, and she's had a tough few years. Things have gone poorly in her life, and so this was like her thing, right? Like we were buying, and I don't do unoccupied purchases. We only do investment purchases. But for her, I made an exception because she had purchased from me before investments, but this was like she wanted to buy her home.
She wanted to buy a home,
and like I had a relationship with her, and she's just a lovely person.
Yeah,
so
you wanted to help.
I wanted to help.
Yeah.
And then so we did our due diligence on a property. She finally found something she liked, and this is why I don't do it on occupied properties because it takes too long. But she finally found something she liked. We did the DD. I spoke to the agents countless times. Everything seemed in order. We get to the auction and it's like chalk and cheese. Like where the reserve was, obviously I don't know for sure, but I was listening to the words and the cues.
Yeah.
Where I believe the reserve was and where I ended up selling was
way above what they were quoting.
Way above. Do you find that underquoting still happens, or?
I think it happens. I don't think it should.
Yeah.
I think you need to be very mindful of what type of a business you're running.
Yeah.
Remember that, you can lose your license, right?
Of course,
I mean, it's an offense.
Yeah.
I think if you are putting a property to market that you're not sure, and you might start with your guide quoting low, you must amend that throughout the campaign. You have to amend it. You have to be very careful what you say to buyers at your open for inspections. And I think misleading people, it's just not cool, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all here. We're all just working. We just want to get along. We just need to work with each other. It doesn't do you any justice. And quite frankly, as I talked before at the beginning, that buyers are very educated now. 15, 20 years ago, you really needed advice from your agents, but buyers can go out now and there's a plethora of information online for them.
Yeah.
They don't always need that. And so when it comes to being reported, people will also report agents.
Yeah.
They will. If they feel that they've been misled or they've just not had a trustworthy conversation with an agent, they will pick up the phone and they'll report you.
Yeah.
So be very mindful of the end result of that.
Yeah.
if you do feel that, you're having feedback that's above your guide, just amend it.
Yeah.
Just amend it. Yeah.
Simple.
Simple as that.
Last couple of questions. So just some stories and real world lessons, I guess.
Yes.
So what's one of the hardest or more memorable auctions you've had to call? And are there any lessons for buyers from any of those situations?
Oh my God, there's so many auctions. I think some of the hardest times I have on the auction floor is when people are very emotional. And so in that moment, I did one years ago with a girl that was heavily pregnant and she was very emotional and she was really, really wanted this property. And they were there. They were, it was just a couple of people bidding at the end. And, I did a couple of trial closes and was threatening to sell and wanted another bid and was pushing for people to keep bidding, obviously working on behalf of the vendor.
Yeah.
And she got really upset and she needed more time to make a decision. And I stepped off. I stopped the auction. I just stopped it and I walked off the auction floor and I went over to her and I said, take the time that you need.
Yeah.
Just take a breath. I will give you the time. I apologized to everybody else. I said, you just have to wait. She needs to make a decision. But she was really worked up. I said to her, just take a breath, take a moment. Let me know if you want to place another bid. She got herself together. She bid and she won.
Yeah.
She was like over the moon that I had given her that time and that little bit of empathy that came with that. And so it's in those moments where people get very upset and they're very flustered. That's hard because you want to make the situation better. And I do struggle a little bit with that. I'm like, I just kind of want to fix it. I want to make everyone feel comfortable,
I want to go to your auctions. It's so nice.
I am a nice auctioneer.
Yeah,
I
it
am
shows
a nice
the
auctioneer.
value of having a good auctioneer on your side because someone else may have just
and maybe that's also my female touch. I have 2 children. I have been heavily pregnant twice, and I know in that moment, you're full of emotions and running through your hormones, and she just needed a moment. And a lot of people just need a moment, and maybe that's something that I can offer that not a lot of other people can.
To be honest, when you started the story with we had someone heavily pregnant, I
thought
thought
maybe
it was going a very different direction.
I have no experience in delivering children. I might have done it twice.
This is a crazy story. Why haven't you just led with this?
But I do think people want a little bit more now, right?
Yeah.
They do want a bit of empathy on the auction floor. They don't want to be yelled at.
Yeah.
They don't want to be told off.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that I'm paving the way for auctions to be just that little bit better. So if I can do something a bit different on the auction floor, I have a lot of people come up to me afterwards and say, oh my God, like you're amazing.
Yeah.
We've never seen a female auctioneer before.
That's a good point.
I love what you're doing. It was I've been to thousands of auctions and I love the way you conducted it. And I think also at my auctions, I'm very explanatory. And so whatever's happening on the auction floor, I will explain that to you, whether we're pausing, whether we're negotiating, all of that kind of stuff where sometimes I think people are getting a bit tired of just having numbers yelled at them. So
that's a great point, actually. Not something I thought of, but as you mentioned, I just quickly did a run back. I was like, I don't know if I've attended too many auctions where the auctioneer was a female. To be honest.
There's not many of us.
Yeah.
There's a couple of fantastic women out there. I'd actually, when it comes to auctioneering, actually, I probably should research it. But clearly, I'm just an auctioneer. It doesn't always have to be female, you know. But we definitely do a little bit differently, and I like the fact that
sounds more fun.
There's young girls reaching out now.
Stuff at yours.
Can you imagine?
It's a whole Bollywood movie. If someone wants to become an auctioneer,
yes,
how do they become an auctioneer?
There's actually lots of great pathways for you to become an auctioneer. You can call me.
Yes, makes sense.
You can. When I started, I actually just worked with a fabulous mentor, and he trained me up. And then the Real Estate Institute in New South Wales and throughout the country as well, in different states, they offer programs for you to do an auction competition, and you kind of graduate through these processes. And just training with great auctioneers is one way to become an auctioneer, and just set yourself up in an environment with other great auctioneers and train and become the best version of yourself.
Yeah, cool. Last question.
Yes.
What is the wildest thing someone's ever done at an auction that you've conducted?
Oh my God. The wildest thing.
Yeah.
I get asked this question a lot, but the times for me that really stood out was during COVID when we were conducting online auctions. And I couldn't believe how many people would sit down in front of the camera. So we use the Zoom platform because we like to see the buyers. And so we would have an entire screen full of 20 we had really high registration numbers during COVID, by the way. Like we would have 15, 20 people registered at these auctions. I don't know what it is. It's like people were happy just to not to leave their living rooms.
Yeah.
Like they were happy just to register and
just
see
watch.
where we really did. We had high registration numbers. So we'd have a screen full of Zoom buyers, and we would do an introduction, and then we would come on and we would start the auction. The amount of people that sat down in front of their camera with a bottle of wine or a 6-pack of beer was unbelievable.
It was reality TV live.
It was reality TV live. I couldn't believe, and then I was really like, oh my God, these people are like bidding drunk.
Yeah.
And you can't legally, you're not really supposed to sign a contract drunk, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not actually allowed to.
Yeah.
You have to be capacity. And, I would notice that there was banter between other buyers and just in general, I think everybody was in their safe space at home. So they felt that no one could touch them, no one could do anything. And anyway, that for me during COVID, I was shocked at how many people drank while they were bidding online.
That's funny.
I mean, that for me was just like,
that's pretty crazy.
imagine showing up on a Saturday auction with a 6-pack of beer and just putting it on the ground, popping them open and drinking while you were bidding.
And then the bids get more
Will
wild.
you just be asked to leave immediately?
That's true. Yeah, you would. That is
well, at
quite
my
wild.
auctions you would.
Yeah. That's quite wild. Emma, thank you very much. This was really cool.
Thanks so much for having me.
I have like 3 million more questions, but
just ask me back.
We'll get you back 100% for episode 2. And obviously a lot of our listeners are buyers, but we have a lot of the sellers that listen, and we actually have heaps of real estate agents that listen.
Yeah, great.
So obviously anyone listening to this wants to use your services now.
Absolutely.
How do they find you?
You can find me online on our website, menkwhite.com.au. I'm on Instagram. Just Google me, Emma Brown Garrett. I'm a real estate agent. My phone number's all over the internet. You can always find a real estate agent's phone number. But, don't hesitate to give me a call if you want a strategy for auction, or you're just an agent who's looking to call better auctions and actually have a really great business that runs really great auctions. I can help you do that. And
we'll put all your details in the show notes so if anyone's looking. And so we have a new thing in the show notes. It's called Fan Mail. There's a link at the top of the show notes, and it'll send you to your text messaging app, and you can send through your questions.
Yeah,
and
please do.
We'll gather all your questions, and we'll bring you back round 2 when you're ready. And if anyone was wondering, it was called Yamla Pagla
Divana.
Yes. Get your Bollywood tonight. Everyone knows what they're doing tonight.
Everyone's going to be Googling.
Friday night plans.
Googling.
You're going to have a random spike in viewership from Australia for tonight.
Thank you for asking about my Bollywood career. It's my little dark secret that hovers in the background.
Thank you for sharing. No, it was really, really wonderful. I appreciate it. And we'll can't wait to get you on again.
See you later.
Cheers.
Thank
Bye.
you.